Well, good morning, and welcome to another episode of Issues That Matter. And in our effort to bring you important information on things that you might not know that much about, I'm very pleased to have Skip Irving and his wife Ann Irving on as guests today to talk to us about Parkinson's disease, as well as the Parkinson's ride that's going to be coming up in September. September 12th, I believe.
September
is the date.
12th, it is.
Thank you, Cloud, for rolling away. Skip, welcome.
Very nice to meet you, Bob.
And very nice to meet you,
Thank
too.
you. Same.
Now, I met Skip at the MS Bike event a couple of weeks ago here at the University of New England, and I had the pleasure of meeting Ann today. Now, Skip is involved with the Michael J. Fox Foundation.
That's correct.
And Ann is involved with the...
Cycling, the New England Parkinson's
All right.
ride.
So why don't we start with you, Skip?
Sure.
Parkinson's disease. I know very little about Parkinson's disease.
Sure.
And what I do know reminds me a lot about what I go through with the MS. Tell us a little bit about Parkinson's.
Sure. Parkinson's disease is a progressive neurodegenerative disease. A lot of people like to think of it as similar to Alzheimer's disease. Those are the two big neurodegenerative diseases. There's about 1 million people in the United States and about 4 million people worldwide that suffer from Parkinson's disease. People, even though they don't recognize it as Parkinson's disease, have probably seen people with the disease. It has very characteristic symptoms. Typically, you will see somebody that has tremors. They will have some rigidity in their movements. They will often be very slow in their movements. And eventually, over a period of time, they struggle with balance. It's quite common to see these people. They'll be walking down the street and they'll have this very sort of unusual gait associated with it. There are a number of famous people who have had Parkinson's disease that people might recognize. Certainly Michael J. Fox, notably, from Back to the Future fame and Family Ties. And he started the foundation that I'm associated with. But there are a number of other people. Muhammad Ali has Parkinson's disease. John Paul II. Pope John Paul II. Johnny Cash, Linda Ronstadt.
Now that was one that I never realized that.
Yeah. So there are a number of people that have suffered for this. So it's actually quite prevalent and a difficult one to manage.
Now you mentioned how many people that have Parkinson's nationally. Do we have any numbers relative to the state of Maine?
I don't know. It's probably, I think if we just took the population of Maine, it's probably, and allocated it based on the population of the United States, it would be very similar to that.
We had a meeting yesterday with one of the aides for Senator Collins, and one of the things that we're looking for the federal government to do is to develop a registry.
Yes.
So that people can report that it can be reported that a person has MS or Parkinson's or
some other disability.
Any other diseases. That way we can get a better handle on just how many people we're talking about here. Right now it's relative to MS, it's simply based on what we know.
Right.
And we know that not everybody that has MS has reported it to us.
Right.
It's a crapshoot.
Well, and I think the same thing is true in Parkinson's disease. I mean, in many of these different neurologically based diseases, that you can have the symptoms for quite a long period of time and not recognize that you have the disease. Many of these are poorly diagnosed. Even if you went to your physician, a general practice physician may not recognize the symptoms. People who are diagnosed eventually with Parkinson's disease, once they recognize the symptoms that the doctor sees, will say, I've started to see these symptoms 5, 8, 10 years ago. So and I'm sure the same thing is true in MS.
Yeah, very definitely. In fact, that was running through my mind as you were talking. This sounds like somebody's talking about multiple sclerosis.
Right, and when family members learn about the disease, they also recognize and they say, I've seen these things going on in my husband or my wife for an extended period of time. So it is quite common that there's going to be a lot of people who are not diagnosed with the disease. And like MS and Parkinson's disease, one of the big challenges we face is getting people to the right doctors, because there are specialists in these diseases and not only for diagnostic purposes, but to make sure that they're right on the right treatment regimen afterwards.
Do you find that the number of neurologists that specialize, I'll say, in Parkinson's, are there a limited number?
There are a limited number, but there are usually a number in each state, and that are associated with the foundations, that advisors to them, that are doing research in the field, so they're very knowledgeable of what's going on.
How about it right in this general area, in the state of Maine?
Yep, there are a couple of Parkinson's clinics and neurology-based clinics. Certainly in Portland, there's a few specialists there. So there are people that you can go to, and I'm sure same with the MS website, just like the Parkinson's website. If you go there, you will find a list of those people to make sure that if you're going to select somebody to go to, that it's somebody that's knowledgeable of the disease. It makes a huge difference in how your disease is managed.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm confident when I say, now correct me if I'm wrong, which is always which in some people's minds is a likability, that there are drugs out there that can slow down the progression.
Yes, we do. We do have, the Parkinson's is a disease, and people may have heard it, is a drug called levodopa. What happens in the brain of a Parkinson's patient is the neurons start to decline over a period of time, and they can't produce adequate enough of a drug called dopamine. And so there's a drug called levodopa. It's a synthetic form of dopamine that's given, and that will slow down the symptoms. But we do not have a cure. And I think that's what we're looking for, and that's the mission of the Michael J. Fox Foundation. In fact, it's its only mission, is to find a cure for Parkinson's disease. So we invest each year. This year we'll invest over $70 million in research in Parkinson's disease. So we're the largest non-for-profit funder of Parkinson's research. We have over 450 projects going on at any one time. We have a staff of 10 PhDs and 1 MD who are constantly following what's going on in the field, research that's going on in other fields like MS, where we might be able to learn from that research and bring it back to Parkinson's disease. And also, academic research and clinical research can be very intense, but it can be very siloed. Investigators are looking at their own approach to the disease. And what we do in the Michael J. Fox Foundation, I think is true in MS as well, is trying to get these people together, to convene them, to share their ideas. And increasingly, we're developing information technology and things so we can use the web and other things like that to exchange information, and we can be much more aggressive in terms of going after the underlying causes of these diseases.
I find that to be very interesting. One of my ideas, one of my goals, is to try and address the high cost of pharmaceuticals, which is staggeringly high. And it's breaking laws of economics that while the numbers of drugs that are out there are increasing, which should, based on the law of economics, should be driving the cost of these drugs down. It's not happening. The cost of the drugs continue to rise at a exceedingly alarming rate. My thought is to get together local stakeholders, pharmaceutical companies, obviously on a local nature, local representation, pharmacists, doctors, advocates, get them together. My observation is that you hear a lot of people talking at each other, but you don't hear too many people talking to each other.
Right.
To try and arrive at a reasonable solution that everybody can find some comfort in.
Right.
And I'm thinking about using the show to try and serve it as a platform to get that conversation started.
Right. Well, I think we do have to build awareness around that, because there's, you've basically got a number of different stakeholders in this discussion around the reimbursement of drugs. And, you can do it at a sort of a grassroots level, where you can help the kind of conversation here, particularly around payers, insurance companies, providers, physicians, the companies that are developing the drugs, and patients. And we need to get all those groups together in order to be able to find the common ground and to find a language for being able to look at how we make cost-benefit trade-offs. What's the right amount of money to spend? And that gets to big public policy issues, which addressed in Washington and in the State House and places like that. So I think that there is a role for that kind of dialogue to go on and figure out where do we want to be in terms of how much we want to pay for drugs and what's the best way to assess the value of those drugs. You can have I'm working with a company right now that has an orphan drug. There's only 350 patients that have ever been diagnosed with this disease. If we want to continue to treat those patients and to do research on a small population like that, then we've got to fund that. And it's as expensive to develop a drug for that disease as it is for Parkinson's or diabetes or hypertension or everything else. So now where a hypertension drug might be used by tens of thousands of patients, in this 350 patients, how do you justify being able to do the research for 350 patients? But this company is dedicated towards doing that. So there are situations where maybe that cost of the drug is something that is well worthwhile. And these patients today, these 350 patients, their lifespan is very short. So now if we can get to a point where we have a cure and extends their life for a long period of time, then you can justify the cost. But in the short term, we need to go through that discussion about what's the right situation and how do we all view that? Do we view it in the same way? Do we view that balance of the cost benefit in the right way?
Okay, let's shift gears a little bit now, and let's start talking about how you got involved in this, how both of you got involved in this from the get-go.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and there's sort of two parts to the story. I mean, one part was I'm a pharmacist by training, and I've been working in the pharmaceutical industry as a management consultant for many years. But one of the side things that I wanted to do was consult to disease foundations. So started working with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation many years ago, and then worked with the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, the Multiple Myeloma Foundation, and then I got involved with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And they were in the process of developing their strategy. They asked me to come on board and help them consult. And then after a few years of consulting, they said, would you be interested in joining the board of directors? So that's how I got involved. Unusual in that I don't have any direct association with Parkinson's disease. Most of the other people involved in the foundation do. And then once we got involved at a very high level in the foundation, there's another part of the foundation that's called Team Fox. And Team Fox is sort of a grassroots fundraising part of the foundation. So there's thousands of different fundraising activities that go on across the country every single year. And over the years, we've raised probably $35 million through these grassroots things. So bike rides, runs, running in the various marathons, hiking mountains, flipping pancakes, all these kinds of things that people are doing all over to raise money for the foundation. And many of those driven by patients and patients' families. So once we got involved, we decided that we wanted to do something more, that we could get involved with too.
We were looking for a more direct contribution other than being on the board and doing the, gala in New York and things like that. I'm a cyclist. Skip is occasionally a cyclist. And we looked all over the New England area, and at the time, this was 5 years ago, the only thing in the New England area was the New England Parkinson's ride, which the Woods family started. They started it in 2008 was the first ride. Right. And we said, perfect, it's, in Maine, right out of Old Orchard Beach, and they have rides of 10 miles, 30, 50, and 100. And we thought, well, we can do 30 miles. And that first year we did 30. And it was like, well, that was really easy. Next year, let's push farther. And each year it's increased, at least for some of us. The last couple years I've done the 100 mile. I plan to do it again this year. And we've been swept into this family that started this, the Woods family. They're fabulous. They started it because Chris Woods was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he was an avid cyclist, and his mother said, okay, let's do a cycling event. The whole family has taken over this ride, and it started out with 35 cyclists, and they raised $27,000 that first year. Last year, there were 626 cyclists, and they raised $424,000. This year, they set a huge goal. They want to have at least 750 cyclists and raise $750,000. They are the largest one-day fundraising event this past year, and they've been in the top 3 for
Team Fox, yeah.
for Team Fox almost from the beginning. They're phenomenal. Last year, I was lucky enough to actually ride with Team Woods because nobody else on our team was riding the 100 except a very fast young gentleman who I couldn't keep up with. And the Woods family swept me up into their group of 20 cyclists and helped me draft along and complete the 100 with them. And I was just honored to be with that family and crossing the finish line with them. So there's a personal connection on my side of the family. My aunt died from Parkinson's. That's not why we started, but I think of her every time we ride.
Now, I know, and people have mentioned to me that they lost a family member or they lost a friend to multiple sclerosis. And one of the things that the neurologist told me when he came in with his diagnosis was that I want you to know that people don't die from MS. And so when somebody says that to me, relative to MS, I'm tempted to say, well, people don't die from MS. But people do die. They're bedridden because they have MS. They can develop pneumonia. And technically, they did not die from the MS.
Right.
They died from pneumonia.
Right.
But the pneumonia was brought on by the MS.
Yeah.
I won't tell you what the humor that I tried to share with the doctor when he told me. Now, my background is New York. I grew up in New York, in Brooklyn. And so I said, let me get my hands wrapped around this now. I have multiple sclerosis. And so if I'm crossing the street in a city and I get hit by a bus because I could not cross the street quickly enough and I die, I did not die from the MS. I died because I got hit by a bus.
Right.
He didn't see the humor.
Yeah, no.
I thought it was a wonderful way to.
Well, I do think that's, I understand the humor. I get it. I do think that's what's different about these diseases than things like cancer, for instance, where there are a lot of people that die directly from the cancer. We have something like, we have many patients every year that happens to. And so that's why I think sometimes it's easier in those cases to raise money for those organizations, because you can draw a straight line from the money you spend to treating that disease to saving the life. And I think in these other diseases where you can have the symptoms for a long period of time, sometimes it's a little harder. But it's every bit as important for exactly the reasons that you mentioned, is that there's a lot of what we call morbidity in the clinical area, that people's quality of life is not what it should be. And so that's why part of our strategy is to try and manage the symptoms in a way that people can go on with their lives. And I think that's what inspires us for riding with Chris and seeing Michael and people like that, is that they're not letting their disease hold them back at all. And that's really amazing.
I'll add a story. A friend of ours was diagnosed a few years ago with Parkinson's, and his wife is an occupational therapist who works in nursing homes, and she had only seen the end of the process of the disease. So they met with Skip and said, what are we dealing with here? This is new to us. And he worked with showing them that he's going to be living with it, that there's a life with Parkinson's. It's not a death sentence.
Right.
You have this long process because they weren't familiar with that part of it. That they have a long life to live, but there will be things to
You have to
deal
make
with.
modification.
Right.
You have to change your life, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to have a life.
He's still sailing his boat in Rockland every year, and still a stagehand, and and still works as an accountant. So he's
And
doing
I
well.
find a key to dealing with is just keep your eyes open for opportunities.
Yeah.
Well, and get involved with your disease. Learn about it, like as you have an MS, and learn and get involved with these other people that are, involved with the foundations and things like that. Well, I remember the first year that I rode, and I thought I had done really well. I'd ridden 30 miles for this, and but I met people there who have had Parkinson's disease for many years, and they're riding their bike on these, and they're doing 30, 50, 100 miles. We were at we were at the end of the race, and I'm cheering everybody on, and this guy comes riding down the hill, and he's sort of wobbly. And, he comes in at the end of the race, and a few of us catch him, and we unhook his shoes and finally get him into a chair. Well, it turns out he's a candidate for deep brain stimulation, which is one of the treatments for Parkinson's disease, where they put a little electrode in your brain. They drill a little hole in there, and they put an electrode in, and almost like a pacemaker. It changes these synapses that are firing wrong.
Change the circuitry a little bit.
Right, change the circuitry and smooth things out. So he was a candidate for that. He had gone in, they had put the hole in, but then for some reason they couldn't do the surgery, so he had a patch on his head. But he had been in, and the next day he's up riding in the ride. Now, at the end of the day, he'd become it was a warm day, he'd become probably dehydrated. Yep. We got some water to him, he was fine. But I look at a guy like that and say, he's riding 30 miles, I can certainly ride 30 miles. Mine was nothing compared to what that guy did. And that's the inspiration that comes out of being involved in these communities, feel like you're doing something to raise money that's going to have a direct impact on patients.
Yep,
so
I agree. And
very exciting.
That's one of the reasons why I volunteer at the MS bike every year. Mm-hmm. I find that I say this to people and they look at me funny, but I tell them, even if you go to the registration, if you don't get charged up by the enthusiasm of the bikers, the volunteers, the staff people, if you don't get charged up, you've got issues.
Yeah.
One of our teammates this year, because we ride both the MS and the New England Parkinson's ride, is 6 months pregnant, and she's quite large, and she rode 25 miles both days.
Yeah.
She normally rides much farther, but she said, no, I'm going to ride. So,
and this one, we have a 10-mile ride. Anybody can get on a bike and ride 10 miles.
Right.
It's not that difficult. You can get it. You can get on a bike and ride 10 miles.
I was hoping at one time they had a 5-mile, what they would call a family ride.
Right.
A
Well, that's
5-mile
what the
ride.
10
That's sort of what the 10 mile is.
And I was hoping that they would have the 5-mile ride again, because I even brought my bike.
Right. Well, the other thing is these rides require a lot of volunteers. I mean, there's the riders, and they're the ones who get a lot of the fanfare and the credit, but when you go into these and they have stations along the way that they're going to feed us and make sure that they've got Gatorade and water and things like that for us. I mean, it's incredibly valuable to have that support. The support vehicles, the motorcycle riders, the people that are organizing these. And when you see the effort that goes into this in the background of what goes on in these rides and things, it's very amazing. That's why, Edna Woods, who started, the ride, and Cindy Woods Lieberg, who now manages the ride. The work that they do is incredible, and the amount of effort that goes into it, and it's really wonderful, wonderful day.
Yeah.
So.
Getting back to the disease, I did some checking on the web, and are there any dietary suggestions that, over and above what I find to be the case with MS, as far as diet is concerned, is just if you have a healthy diet, that's what they look for, just a healthy diet. There's nothing specific that's going to benefit MS specifically. Is there any dietary suggestions relative to?
Well, I think one of the things we've learned about Parkinson's disease is that people get comfortable with their own regimen. And for some people, there are, certain nutritional supplements will work. In other situations, certain dietary, patterns will work, whether it's high vegetables or things like that will help out. The biggest thing that I think helps people out is keeping active and exercise and putting that together with diet, because particularly in these diseases where motion, and the firing of those synapses in the brain is critical. You have to keep those active. And I think that's one of the amazing things that we've seen in Parkinson's disease is that people with Parkinson's disease who have trouble walking can ride a bike. It's amazing. And there's something about riding a bike and the way the brain processes that allows them, where they maybe have trouble with their balance otherwise, they can ride a bike. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Because I find I can bicycle a lot easier than I can walk.
Yeah, it's amazing, and different things work for different people. At some point down the road, when we understand more about these diseases, we're going to find out that it's probably not one disease. it's probably a group of related things that are going on that when we look at the symptoms, they all sort of look at the same disease. But everybody's disease is slightly different. You know, as we were talking a little bit earlier before the show, in Parkinson's disease, the genetics, straight genetics, where you see it in families, is probably only about 10 or 15% of the population. But there's probably some predisposition that then the environmental influences, maybe infectious diseases that you've had, or other things will cause that a trigger that will cause the disease. And we're learning more and more about that.
And I don't know whether we mentioned it in the show, but I know we've talked about how finding a cure for one of these diseases, be it MS, Parkinson's,
absolutely,
diabetes, will open up a treasure trove of possibilities for all of the diseases. And which brings me to another deeply held thought of mine, is that by supporting one, you are in essence supporting all.
That's right. The research that we do in one will certainly help all these other diseases. There's no question about that.
And it's a motivational thing for me to try and get these groups together and communicating with each other, and acting more as a team, you might say.
Absolutely. Well, that's why we got together with this woman who used to work with me, and we have our cycling team. It's called Cycling for Synapses, because we ride for MS, we ride for Parkinson's, and they're all related, at the synapse level. So we have a logo with a bike on it and these synapses coming off the back, because they all are interrelated. There's going to be things that we learn about them, and I think one of the more exciting areas of research for MS and for Parkinson's disease is understanding more about how the body reacts to these things, and as we're learning in cancer as well, that perhaps the best way to attack these things is to get the body going to attack it themselves. And through a variety of, we call them autoimmune diseases, and immunology, and using immunology in the body's own way of attacking diseases of the body. And some of these things are happening in error today, and if we can figure out how to get them turned around, then if we figure it out for one, we'll figure it out for multiple.
One of the things that I learned after I got involved with doing what research I could do relative to MS is, I'll coin a word, the remarkability of the human body.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the human body is a remarkable instrument that can take care of itself.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible thing. It really is.
Yeah.
And I would very much look forward to advancing our conversation to see how we can work together.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and there's a lot of work to be done, and that's where we need people to get involved in whatever way. If you can ride. If you want to volunteer, volunteer. If you can donate, ride with us in spirit. And
I'm tempted to throw my name in the hat to take 10-mile stand.
I tell you, if you met Cindy and Edna Woods, you'd be out there with us.
Yeah.
I mean, they are incredible people, and they run an incredible ride. One of the things we have this year, and you might want to say something about the Italy raffle. Oh,
that's right. Yeah, they're doing a raffle, and it's a $100 ticket. They're only $200 tickets. It's a choice of 5 different 2-bedroom villas. It's in Tuscany, in Mancino, Italy, and that includes, $2,500 towards airfare.
Airfare. So, there's only 200 tickets, so you got a pretty good, it's better than the lottery. You got a good chance of
So you can find it on the website for New England Parkinson's ride.
Maine Parkinson's ride.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful ride, and we hope people will come out and join us for that and learn more about the disease too. And if somebody's watching that has the disease and has questions about it, certainly the Michael J. Fox website, the Parkinson's Foundation are great places to go and learn about things. There's a lot of great information there. One of the programs one of the challenges that all these diseases face is getting people to get involved in clinical trials. We've got a lot of great research going on, and we may be turning the corner on some things in a number of these diseases, but you need to have patients involved, and you need to have volunteers who don't have the disease to be involved in these clinical trials, because we need to be able to compare what's going on with the patient versus somebody who doesn't have the disease to figure out whether we're really making progress. And so one of the things we've put together at the Fox Foundation is called Fox Trial Finder. And you can go on there and you can see all the clinical trials that are being done. You're seeing the new ones that are being recruited for, and and you can sign up for those trials. And it's really a fascinating program. And this is, again, outreach, getting people involved, and there's a lot of ways to be able to do that. And on the way, you learn about your disease, you learn about all the resources that are available to you, and you can manage your own disease a lot more effectively.
Well, the elusive cure. Where do you, how, if you were to try and apply a time frame?
And if I could, I could donate money to every single one of these causes because I'd be so wealthy. I do think that, I've been in the pharmaceutical business now for over 30 years. And we have, in the early years, in most of the diseases that we have today, we are treating the symptoms of the disease. We're not really treating the underlying cause of the disease. There's very few diseases that we actually cure. Hypertension we don't cure. We treat the symptoms. We treat the blood pressure. If it's diabetes, we're treating the potential, or glaucoma related to diabetes. We're treating the intraocular pressure. We're not treating the underlying disease. But we are getting a lot closer on these things because of the way technology is going. And it's going at such a fast rate. I don't think it's going to be another 30 years on these things. I think we're looking at, we've got drugs, in Parkinson's disease, we've got several good targets that we're going after, that we have drugs in early clinical trials. Now, the first ones may not be the best drugs, but we're getting better at it. Cystic fibrosis is a great example of one where there has been tremendous progress, that we're treating the symptoms for many years. But now we have a couple of drugs available because we understood what the genetic target was. We understood exactly what was going on in the body, and once we did, within 15 years of figuring that out, we had a drug available. So I think we're getting very close to understanding, at least, maybe not for all patients, but for a good segment of patients, what's going on with that disease. So if I say, let's say that happens in the next 5 to 10 years, I think within 15 years after that, we will have a drug that will cure these patients.
And the
Some
interesting
group of
thing
patients.
about the Michael J. Fox Foundation is they refused to have an endowment because they said, we don't want to continue to exist. We want to find the cure and then disband.
So
they
every
don't
dollar
wanna
that's
keep doing
raised
it.
goes into research, and we don't create an endowment, and we have to raise the money every single year. So, it's
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for your efforts at the MS Bike.
Yeah,
That was
certainly a great ride too, and
is.
well organized, unbelievable. So
They amaze me.
yeah, we always have a lot of fun.
Sue Tidd and
does a
the
great job.
staff at the office do remarkable work, and we have a wonderful web of volunteers.
Yeah.
One of whom is Max, who does the recumbent
Yeah. Oh yeah.
cycling.
Yeah.
We met several of the recumbent
We met
riders.
several of them on the ride. Yeah. And we'll have a few on the Parkinson's ride
That's
too.
got my curiosity peaking a little bit.
Yeah, you should try it out. You should try it out. So.
I want to give a stab at the traditional bicycle.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, we hope we get a lot of people out for the New England Parkinson's ride, and NewEnglandParkinsonsRide.com.
Well, I would strongly encourage people, whether you can ride or not, just going there, and as I pointed out earlier, for the registration.
Right.
The enthusiasm shown by the bikers, by the staff people, by the volunteers. Now, some people might be offended by this, but if you go there and you don't get charged up, you might have some other issues going on.
Yeah.
Because I find it to be an excellent way to recharge my batteries.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to say one other thing, which is that the ride could not happen without the support of the community. We have had great support from Saco, from
Old Orchard
Biddeford,
Beach.
Old Orchard Beach, and from the team at the ballpark. The ballpark allows us to use that for the day. We go in, we have plenty of places to park.
Yep.
We set up tents there for the registration. We're having a dinner the night before. We're going to have a lobster dinner the night before.
Which, if you want to participate in, you need to register before September 9th
Right.
online.
And then afterwards, we'll all be there and partying and having hamburgers and hot dogs after the ride. So it's great. So if even people don't want to ride, they want to come down and party afterwards, come on down and see us. It's at the old ballpark in Old Orchard.
Beach.
So
I've never been to that ballpark.
Oh, you should go over sometime. It's great. We just went to a game. They had a Parkinson's awareness night, and the New England Parkinson's ride was there, and it was fascinating. It's great. You're right down on the field. You can see all the players. They're right there. We had a bat that they'd all signed, and we raffled off. It was great. We had great fun.
Good.
So definitely want to thank those.
Well, I
want to
thank you both again for not only for your appearance on today's show, but I want to thank you very much for your support with the MS Bike.
Absolutely. We'll be back
sure.
next year.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Thank
Pleasure.
you. One last question.
Sure.
If there was one piece of information that you would like people to take away from our conversation today, what would that piece be?
I think let me speak first to patients, because I think this is really important. The most important thing for a patient is get to the right physician. All right. There are, as I said earlier on, a general practitioner, even some neurologists are not necessarily experts in Parkinson's disease. Getting to the right physician, we have found through our research and following what's going on, has the most meaningful impact on patients' ability to manage their disease and have a good quality of life. I think the same thing is going to be true in MS. So that for patients,
you're absolutely right.
That's the number one message. For people who, have people who are, who have family members and others, the biggest thing you can do is encourage them to get involved in their disease and to learn about it, to understand the disease, because we're all fearful. People will go months, years without letting people know what's going on in their lives. But there are people who want to help, and there are a lot of other people out there who will inspire them to be much more active in their disease. And it's a scary thing when you're first diagnosed. And, but I think that there's a lot of assistance out there for getting beyond that and
in my case, in retrospect, I could say ignorance was bliss. I didn't know anything about it, but it turned out all right for me.
And initially it's easy to say, I can pretend I don't have this disease, because maybe it's not affecting your quality of life a lot. But as you go down the road, having that support there, understanding a disease, understanding what's going on in your body is
And it can
huge.
impact you in ways that people have no way of knowing.
That's right.
In my case, it wasn't so much a physical aspect. It was just my ability to handle stress, my ability to...
Right. And the real inspirational piece of it is that you get involved in a supportive community that you never would have gotten involved with otherwise.
Yep.
And you see people and learn from how they're managing the disease. And you meet incredible people like we've met the Woods and the whole Woods family and a lot of other people associated with the ride. And it's been a tremendous amount of fun for
that
us.
speaks to it, you mentioned it earlier, get involved.
Right, get involved and expand your world.
You never know what kind of doors of opportunity.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've often, to add I'll say a religious flair, you might say, I often say, I'm very thankful that Jesus Christ was a carpenter, because he's built a lot of doors of opportunity for me.
That's right. Yeah, it
well,
does
thank
open
you
a lot of
again.
doors. It's a pleasure, and thank you for doing this. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
the opportunity
Thank
to be
you.
on the show.
Okay, and folks, I hope you enjoyed the show. I know I found it informative. Have a great day. Whatever you do, simplify your life. It's a complex world out there. Take advantage of the resources that we have right in our own community, right in our own backyard. Have a good day, have a safe day, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.